I watched a bulldozer chew into my cabin like a mouthful of steel, and the woman in the bright yellow hard hat, the HOA president, pointed like a field general, telling the operator where to bite next. And when I shouted that she had no right, she dialed 911 and told them I'd assaulted her. Yeah, that happened, and it should have ended me. If not for one thing, I'm stubborn enough to document everything and too old to be scared off my own land. Let me back up a sec because the fuse on this mess didn't start with the bulldozer. It started with a smile that didn't reach the eyes. My name's Mike Alvarez, retired city electrician, 30 years of crawling through attics, basements, and places you only visit if you like spiders. And 3 years ago, I sank my savings into a little 1960s cabin outside Austin. 800 square feet, an acre of oaks, a creaky front door that felt like a handshake, the kind of quiet you can hear. 2 days in. I'm watering the flowers, my ex planted, not sentimental, just habit. Okay, maybe a little sentimental, and up the driveway marches. This woman, clipboard hugged to her chest like scripture. I'm Sloan Whitaker, HOA president, she says, and it comes out so rehearsed I could hear the underline. She doesn't ask how I'm settling in. She offers me $95,000 cash, 2-week close smile locked in place like a plastic lid. You know what I mean when somebody's trying to hustle you politely. I told her I just paid $240, and even that was a deal because the place needed love. She went cold in the pupils, said, "We'll see," and I could feel the temperature drop on my porch. The next morning, there were 12 violation notices under my door, each $500 grass, 1 inch over regulation paint, not in compliance with neighborhood palette, mailbox height, aesthetic deviation, my favorite piece of poetry from folks who worship at the altar of beige. 20 minutes after I finished reading, guess who knocked Sloan with an adjusted offer, now $85,000, given these serious issues? That was the moment I realized this wasn't HOA. Nagging, it was a business model. Manufacture, pressure discount, the land pocket, the profit. And here's what Sloan didn't know. 30 years with codes and inspectors teaches you 2 things: how real violations look and how fake ones are written by people who don't know what they don't know. So I started where every irritated old tradesman starts research: public records, property maps. Her name kept popping up on LLCs that owned rentals nearby, and a list of acquisitions that were always reluctant but necessary according to clipped meeting minutes. Same pattern: sudden fines, surprise safety inspections, low-ball offers, signatures under stress. Brilliant in its laziness, probably illegal in 3 different ways. If she wanted to play the violation game, we could play, but for real. I took a drive. One of her houses on Maple had outlets, practically kissing a kitchen sink, GFCI nowhere. Another spot ran extension cords under a porch to feed permanent lights. Nope. Third place? Good Lord. A DIY panel that looked like a bird's nest had swallowed a fuse box. I filed legitimate complaints, clear codes, clear risk, no grandstanding. Funny how the city moves when it's actually dangerous. By dinner, Sloan was staring at $18,000 in mandatory fixes and wearing a sour lemon face on my porch. She upped her offer to $110. I sipped my coffee and said I wasn't selling at any price. She dropped the mask, hissed something about not knowing who I was dealing with, and that afternoon my power got shut off. I called the utility. They said there'd been a safety complaint. I called 2 guys I used to work beside. They looked into it and called it what it was: bogus. The service came back. The city fined whoever filed the false report $2,500. And I left a paperback electrical code manual on Sloan's windshield with a sticky note. Study up, you're gonna need it. Petty, absolutely. Satisfying like cold beer in August. Neighbors started picking teams. A retired teacher across the way told me she'd had run-ins with Sloan too. A couple next door suggested I keep the peace and take the money, said HOAs always win. I thanked them for the casserole and ignored the advice. Sloan tried a structural emergency inspection with a guy who pronounced my perfectly normal foundation cracks catastrophic. But I'd had a real engineer, my buddy Gus Hanley, do a pre-buy check. One call, one official report, and the city clerk tossed their drama in the recycle bin. Strike two. Then came the rumbling. A construction truck started cruising my street. Slow roll passes, the company name, matching letterhead I'd seen under Sloan's arm. I was loading groceries one Tuesday when I turned the corner and lost my breath. A bulldozer sat in my yard, half my workshop already rubble. 30 years of tools and projects crushed into splinters, and Sloan was directing like a foreman in a costume. I ran, yelling. The operator hesitated. She flashed papers. Emergency demolition order. I called City Hall on speaker, asked them to verify permit TB4471, and the clerk said, "Sir, we never issued that." The operator shut down, backed away, said he wasn't going to jail for fake paperwork. And Sloan, well, she doubled down, shouting about neighborhood safety like she was saving kittens from a fire. Neighbors filmed the couple next door, whispered, "Oh God," and I walked through sawdust. That used to be my grandfather's hand tools, the ones he brought from Mexico in the 40s, my hands shaking, not from fear this time, from rage. Sloan stepped in close, told me I should have taken her first offer, said the property was worthless now, and I smiled just a little, because I knew she'd finally crossed into felonies with witnesses and video. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life," I said, and for the first time her voice wobbled. "If the story ended there, you wouldn't be hearing it from me." The next move was worse. 3 days later, sirens came screaming down my street, 4 cruisers' lights bouncing off the cab of the bulldozer that was still sitting there like a guilty dog. Leading them was Detective Ana Ruiz's sharp eyes, quiet posture, who announced they had a report of assault and terroristic threats. Across the street, Sloan looked like she'd gone through a bramble patch, scratches on her arms, hair messy, tears on tap, and she pointed at me like I'd set the sky on fire. The officers cuffed me while she delivered an Oscar-level monologue about how she'd come to resolve the dispute, and I'd snapped, grabbed her, told her she'd disappear. She even had text messages from my number, big, scary phrases, timestamps, audio clips that sounded like me shouting. It was coordinated, rehearsed, and if I'd been the one listening instead of living it, I might have believed her too. "You mind checking my cameras?" I asked Ruiz, keeping my voice calm because anger smells like guilt and baffled honesty smells like truth. If I laid hands on her 20 minutes ago, we'll see it. Sloan tried to block it, said video could be faked, which only made Ruiz more curious. We watched the bulldozer footage, my call to dispatch on the screen with a timestamp from 2 days earlier. We pulled my phone's morning timeline hardware store receipt conversation with a sales guy about junction boxes at the exact minute I supposedly assaulted Sloan 3 miles away. Then Ruiz called the carrier about those texts. They'd been sent through a spoofing service from a different device. A paramedic looked at the scratches, 2 shallow angles wrong for a struggle, more like someone performed injured in a mirror. And then the twist, the kind that makes liars choke on their own story. Ruiz asked to see Sloan's phone. Inner messages were threads with a city inspector named Derek Fulton, time-stamped calls the morning of the supposed assault notes about a stubborn holdout, little phrases like push condemnation and we need leverage. Photos of my property with handwriting on them, what to knock down first for maximum psychological impact. The bulldozer operator's invoice. The fake permit template. Ruiz's voice changed the way a sky changes, same room, different weather. She turned, told me to face forward, and told Sloan and Derek they were under arrest for false reporting, fraud, conspiracy, bribery. The block went quiet. Then a little cheer broke at the edge of the crowd, the kind of relieved noise people make when the spell finally lifts. The search warrants painted the rest of the picture. Over the next week, investigators tore through Sloan's office and home, and dominoes fell. 8 years of acquisition spreadsheets that rated owner resistance, a menu of prices for crooked inspections, 8 other homeowners who'd been pushed, fined, pressured, and sold for pennies. Derek had been the inside man for 3 years, selling emergency orders and rubber-stamping fake hazards. The district attorney called it one of the ugliest property schemes they'd seen, small enough to hide, big enough to wreck lives. Court moved slower than anger, but faster than fear. Sloan pled to multiple felonies, spent close to 2 years inside, lost her license, her rentals, and her friends, who only liked her when she wore power. Derek pled too, forfeited his pension, got 18 months and a lifetime ban from public work. The city tightened inspection oversight. Every single emergency now needs real documentation and a second signature. Restitution hit my account and every cent went back into the land. Gus designed a new workshop, bigger, brighter, the kind of place where sawdust feels like snow. I ran proper wiring, of course I did, dust collection that actually collects LEDs bright enough to find the screw you just dropped, and climate control because Texas humidity loves to ruin a good tool. Insurance and restitution covered a porch rebuild, better windows, insulation that keeps the summer at the curb. The neighborhood changed too, not overnight, but in that way you only notice when you breathe a little easier. Without the paper-thin tyranny, people started waving again, kids left bikes on the grass without a citation showing up, and the teacher across the street baked me a pie that tasted like an apology. The couple next door showed up with work gloves, helped frame the new shop, told me they'd been scared, and they were sorry. Fear makes cowards of decent people sometimes, but decency climbs back. Here's the part that makes strangers nod when I tell it the after. A local paper wrote it up and the headline went viral. Folks sent me emails from all over, not because I'm special, but because bullies rely on quiet, and we're all tired of whispering. I wrote everything down, how to document, who to call, what to ask for, and turned it into a book that paid for more coffee than I could drink. People call me now when their HOA turns into a hobby for tyrants and I talk them through the boring miracle of evidence. It's not romantic scans save label, but justice loves a paper trail. Sometimes I drive past a discount store on the far side of town, roll slow through the lot, not to gloat, not to rub salt, just to remind myself that consequences are real, even when they take the long road. Sloan's usually out front corralling carts, head down, name tag pinned where a clipboard used to sit. Derek works nights in a warehouse. From what I hear, no badge, no seal, just boxes and time. I don't say a word. I go home, back to the shop, back to the hum of a planer, back to a life that almost got bulldozed because somebody mistook power for permission. If there's a moral, and I'm not pretending I'm a preacher, it's this document. Everything breathe. When you want to shout, ask for proof. When someone says, trust me and don't sell your home to make a bully comfortable, sometimes the system creaks, sometimes it stalls, sometimes it surprises you. And when it does, it's because somebody refused to be quiet. You know what I mean? I close my shop at dusk now, porch light warm the oaks, throwing long shadows across a place I earned twice, once when I bought it, once when I wouldn't let it be stolen. And if you're wondering how it felt to watch that bulldozer reverse and leave, I'll tell you it felt like a verdict with diesel in it. The camera's still up over my door. The footage is backed up 3 places. Not because I'm scared, but because memory is a liar and files don't flinch. So tell me, was justice served? Or did the sentence fall short? Where's the line between protecting a neighborhood and policing it to death? And what would you have done if that hard hat showed up in your yard? Drop your take below, argue it out, keep it civil. Right, wrong, community, accountability. Because the only thing stronger than a bully with a plan is a street full of neighbors who've decided they're done being quiet.